Hey everybody, it's Carter Froelich. And our mission at Launch Development Finance Advisors is to be a hero to the land development and home building community. We do that through a lot of different ways, but one of the ways that I want to give back to the industry is to be able to share our experience as well as the experience of a myriad of different players in our industry, their experience, what they've learned, what they're doing, and just the knowledge that they have to provide to the industry. With that having been said, I hope you enjoy this episode. And if there's anything that we can do at launch to help you finance infrastructure, reduce costs, mitigate risk,
Welcome
all
to the
with
Land to
goal of
Lots
enhancing project
podcast, powered by
profitability and
Launch
returns,
Development Finance
please give us a
Advisors.
call at
And
the
now your
contact
host,
information
Carter
in the show notes.
Froelich.
Welcome back to episode 2 of my conversation with Tim Kim and Brian Rupp of QTative. Yeah, and it's really easy to get lost in the weeds with all the alphabet, of SB this, AB that. If we start moving on to some of the other legislation, the Reader's Digest version and why developers, builders, investors should care about SB 330R.
Well, the biggest thing is that they can't deny your project. The agencies
Yeah.
can't deny your project unless, like I said, it's a life safety issue, which they usually are not.
Yeah.
And it just streamlines the process. And they can't arbitrarily create requirements for the project. They have to be objective standards that they're basing those decisions on. So it really, you use the term de-risk a lot. It really de-risks the project.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that. Let's jump on because we're always on value. We're creating value. We're de-risking we're getting the entitlements. We're de-risking the transaction. There's other opportunities now in the state of California with the state bonus. I can't talk. State density bonus law. And obviously, if we can add more density to land, that is going to enhance the value. Would you care to start talking about to the audience the California state density bonus law and what that means? And then maybe you could discuss how you're applying it with real life projects you're working on.
Sure. Well, so a project becomes eligible for this state density bonus law that you referenced by adding affordable housing. So sometimes people will pay an in lieu fee for affordable. That wouldn't count. But if you're going to have some component of affordable housing on your site, then you're eligible for this density bonus law. In fact, it's not only affordable housing. It could be senior housing. It could be student housing. So there's, some different options there. And then what happens is, initially it was more specifically to increase the density. But there's some other benefits. And now a lot of people use this and they don't even need it to increase the density. And they don't increase the density. They just keep their density, but they use it for what's called incentives, concessions, or waivers. And that's become really big. And so what happens is you agree to have some affordable housing. Now, keep in mind, in a lot of places, there are inclusionary ordinances. Cities or counties are basically requiring you to do affordable housing. Most typically, it might be 10% affordable. And so if an agency is already saying you have to have affordable, then you just get the benefit of density bonus law by that, by the fact that they're requiring it anyway. And a lot of times we'll have, we'll have a separate parcel for affordable so that an affordable housing company can come in and develop and do a really great job at it.
Right.
So we'll kind of carve that out.
Hey, Tim, before we get too far into the affordable, what is the definition, and there may be multiple, of affordable in the state of California?
Sure.
Nothing's easy, but high level. Yeah.
So people often say affordable with a capital A, versus lowercase. Lowercase a would be, hey, just homes are by design, by nature, more affordable if maybe they're, apartments or, multifamily, but capital A affordable is what we're talking about here. And that means you are going to deed restrict the land for affordable housing. And the affordable is going to be anywhere from, it's based on AMI,
Mm.
income levels. It'll be anywhere from extremely low, or they even have a homeless category now where you're making 0 to 30% of the average median income. And then they have extremely low, very low, low. Most
Mhm.
often you see
Yep.
low, which is 60 to 80% of AMI. So you're deed restricting it for that. And then there's moderate, which is 80 to 120% AMI. And then there's above moderate. But you have to be either moderate or below to
Okay.
get the benefit of density bonus.
Thanks. Thanks for that clarification. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but there's a lot to unpack here for those that aren't familiar with California. So
That's a good distinction. And that
yeah,
leads right into how much bonus density do you get,
yeah,
right? And
yep.
so that is based on both the percent of affordable you're willing to do and the level of affordability. So if you do say 5% moderate, that's kind of the
Mm.
lowest bar. Um, then you'll get, you don't get any incentives and concessions. I'll explain those in a minute, but you get unlimited waivers and you get, some density bonus. Whereas if you do say 10% low density, then you'll get an increase in density and you'll get one incentive or concession and unlimited waivers. So then what that means, and by the way, your increased density can go up as high as 50 or even 80% increase.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you were going to have 100 units, you might be able to get 180 units. I've even heard of 100% increase because you can kind of stack some of these. But so then the two things that people are using the most within that, in addition to increased density, are incentives. And incentives, you get a limited number of those. And you're either going to get one, two, or three incentives. Incentives and concessions are used interchangeably, but
Hmm.
and those can be used for cost reduction measures. Maybe there's in some component the city is requiring you to do, and it's just infeasible. Um, then you can apply an incentive or concession to that.
Okay.
Waivers are very commonly used now. Those are unlimited, and those are to help um, deal with a development standard that doesn't work for you.
Hmm.
So we have a project in San Diego that Brian and I were working on, and there was actually a voter initiative there that said buildings can't be higher than a certain height,
Hmm.
and that didn't work for the builder with the product they were building, and we were able to, both by SB 330 and by density bonus waivers, remove that um, height restriction. We also often, a city will say, hey, you can do 5 units per acre in this spot. But because of the building coverage requirements and the setbacks and the height restrictions, you can never fit 5 homes on an acre,
Yeah.
right? So this allows you some relief from setbacks, building heights. You get one of the other things density bonus gives you is a guaranteed reduction in parking requirements.
Wow.
Um,
So what are the best size projects, location of projects for you to start bringing in the conversation? Maybe we should take a look at the density bonus law yeah, as any real life projects you're working on right now, or locational or size characteristics.
I would say any size really almost
Yeah.
works, Carter. I mean,
Okay.
stuff that's an acre. I would say most of the stuff we're working on is in the 3 to 20 acres where we're getting a huge benefit, but we've got some larger master plan communities that we're using it on. So
Yeah.
um, we had one. Brian, you want to mention the one that was pretty dynamic that we did in down in the city of San Diego?
Yeah, the one in city of San Diego was a larger project, a couple hundred units, and it was interesting because um, it had a general plan land use designation for residential of 5 units to the acre. in the general plan. But the zoning was the old zoning, which was agricultural zoning of 1 acre lots and 10 acre lots. And this was one where the city staff came back and said, oh no, you have to do a zone change. We're able to go in and avoid the zone change and not only use the 5 unit to the acre density in the general plan, but do density bonus of 50% because of the affordable housing that the developer was going to do. Yeah. And so we got to 7.5 units to the acre. We were able to reduce a lot of the setbacks, and we were able to modify the building height. Yeah. And that was one that was kind of interesting because it was a voter initiated height restriction that was put into place back in, I think, the 70s. And so voter initiated, and that was kind of a new one. So when they write this legislation, you're looking at a specific project with very specific details. Right. How do you apply this broad brush legislation to the details of your project? That was a nuance that we had to deal with in that case. And we were actually fortunate to find a precedence through HCD where this had been applied, where the legislation overrides voter initiated development standards. So it was a great win for our team. And ultimately able to get the planning director and her staff on board with this. So I think to Tim's point, we're able to use it in larger master plan community projects. We're able to use it in the urban infill projects, redevelopment. So it really has quite a broad reach of where we can use this. The key is looking at the eligibility criteria specific to your project. It's not one size fits all necessarily. So you have to look at the nuances, and there are exclusions in this legislation. When we'll talk about that in some of the new legislation that's before us now.
Yeah, and that's really the purpose, to get people thinking about how we might be able to take this. What are the pros and cons? And if we're going to go after the density bonus, then what are some of the opportunities? But then also the capital A affordable units. How does that play into our master plan, into our 20-acre infill site in San Diego or what have you? Because when I just start listening to everything you're saying, we can move the setbacks, we can get waivers, we can get concessions. I mean, there's a lot of math going on that 20-acre site, I would think, to what does this do in terms of valuation as it relates to creating value, and what does that do for my built product? I mean, so you guys are the ones that are running all of these different scenarios, then I would assume.
And at the end of the day, it's not just the density, like Tim mentioned. Some of our clients are choosing not to do the density bonus, but if you can reduce your street widths by 5 feet, think of the paving costs and the land costs that you're saving. And so there are a lot of benefits to it that actually go to the bottom line.
Yeah. No, that's you, and it's. I guess the point I'm trying to make is, unless you know what the rules are and how to apply those rules to your site with somebody that's knowledgeable, you're going to miss a lot of the potential opportunities to take advantage of what the state is now allowing us to have. If that makes sense.
We've met with builders and tell us about the projects they're doing, and we say, well, did you use SB 330? Well, no, didn't really know we could use it or how it would apply and everything. We're like, well, if you did, you wouldn't be having to do this, and this that you're having to do, and you would have been done with this a year ago.
So, Tim, we've got a couple of great tools. We got the density bonus law. We've got SB 330. What are the differences between the two, and how are they working together?
Yeah, that's a great question, because people don't always realize you can use multiple pieces of legislation. They can all help each other with it. And you often do. We're often using SB 330 to kind of de-risk the project and to eliminate, agencies from being able to put in these policies or just kind of arbitrary requirements on a project. And then you have density bonus law that's helping you with increased density and these incentives to help provide relief on infeasible costs.
Yeah.
And then the waivers that help with development standards, like Brian just mentioned, and setbacks and road widths and whatever. Those require affordable housing. SB 330, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to do SB 330 because I can't afford to do affordable housing. We're like, you don't need to.
Yeah.
SB 330 has nothing to do with affordable housing. That's just the state density bonus law. So those are separate.
Yeah. Now, and it just reinforces, to bring the team together that knows all the different tools in the toolbox and how and when to use them to help our clients get to go where they need to go. So at the beginning of the show, we talked about AB 130. Yay, another one. But at least the state is starting to pass legislation that is helping us, move forward, and our clients and the industry. So why don't we just jump into AB 130? If you would care to describe what that is and why our listeners in the industry would care about AB 130.
Yeah, no, Carter, AB 130, we're very excited about it. It only took our legislators 50 years and to get to this. And that's really driven by, a lot of influence by labor environmental groups in Sacramento. But this is truly the first CEQA reform that we've seen in 50 years. Two pieces were introduced July of this year, July 2025. AB 130. I'm going to talk about that first, but then SB 131 was also a sister bill that came along with that. Both of them were introduced as budget trailer bills, but CEQA reform is what we want to think of with AB 130 and SB 131. So AB 130, I think, is going to be the primary driver for developers and builders, and the most widely used. And it's going to be used in conjunction with SB 330 and state density bonus law. But Assembly Bill 130, AB 130, has three criteria that you need to meet to use it. One, you need to be located in an area that's already developed. That basically means developed on three sides of your properties. It could be developed as a park. It can be developed as a street, but just developed. And this is a pretty broad range. Two, you need to be less than 20 acres in size. And three, you have to be consistent with the general plan and zoning land use for that site. So you already have to have general plan land use in place. I think the good news there is that a lot of the cities in California have updated their general plan and zoning to meet the housing requirements that Sacramento's put on them. So this creates, and what it does, if you're eligible and you meet those key criteria, you're exempt from CEQA. Why is that important? Well, it significantly de-risks the deal. We now no longer have the threat of being held up in court for years with a CEQA challenge. Again, environmental groups and NIMBYs can very easily file a CEQA challenge on other projects. This derails them from doing that. So that's a huge win for our industry. It's going to create a lot of opportunities, particularly for these infill opportunity sites, less than 20 acres in areas that have development. So you look at it, what are the benefits? In addition to being CEQA exempt, you're developing an infill site that already has infrastructure to it, already has streets to it. So your offsite infrastructure costs are a lot less. So it's going to open the door for a lot of new sites to be developed.
And there was another bill too that was passed that's somewhat of a complementary or follow-on, SB 131.
Yes, thank you.
Just to add another one for our listening audience.
just to add another piece of confusing legislation and to mix up the nomenclature, but yes, Senate Bill 131 was a sister bill introduced at the same time. And what SB 131 does, it provides a CEQA exemption for those properties that have general plan land use designation, but the zoning hasn't been put in place to match that general plan yet. So what we've seen, that's one of the key things that it does. The other thing it does is if your project would otherwise not have to do CEQA, but for one particular topic, that then the only thing you need to study is just that one topic. So it streamlines CEQA. So the SB 131 bill is often referred to as CEQA streamlining. But again, I think one of the big practical things that we're looking at, this is brand new, we're looking at on a couple sites, is where you have a site that's got general plan land use because the city's updated their general plan. That's the first step in meeting the housing requirements in California. The next step the city needs to do is actually rezone all those properties in their general plan to be consistent with the general plan. And that sometimes can take years.
Yeah.
And this now says you're exempt from CEQA to do that rezoning. So these two bills are huge for the industry. We're already using them on a few sites, and I would say the response from the cities is a mixed bag. There's a lot of education that has to happen right now. Working in one city, and we had an initial meeting with the city, and we brought it up, and they said, yes, you qualify AB 130. We don't see an issue. Other cities said, this just came out. We don't know what to do with it. Sorry, Brian. We're trying to figure it out ourselves. So I can't give you any guarantees, but so it's going to be a process of educating the cities and working through it. But we are being able to use AB 130. I have a site now I'm working on with we're using SB 131 to rezone a property to be consistent with the recently adopted general plan. And so I think you take these two new pieces of legislation, combine it with SB 330 and state density bonus law, and now we're cooking with gas.
Yeah. And so we have all this new legislation. We have a streamlining process. To our listeners, layering in the different legislation when appropriate, how does this all boil down to impact the bottom line? Show me the money, guys. Where am I? How is this helping me? If you were going to just make it real simple for the audience.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, you're de-risking the deal. You're reducing your risk overall because you're taking out the threat of CEQA. You're reducing your development costs. And then with AB 130, you can take what would be a 2-year process to go through the entitlement approval and the CEQA environmental review, which is a 2 to 3 year process, pretty much at minimum. You're taking it down to 6 to 9 months.
Wow.
So think about the carry costs you're going to save, the financing costs that you're going to save. So it's millions of dollars. In addition to reducing the risk. So when your land acquisition guy goes into investment committee, he can lay this out and say, here's how we're de-risking the deal for our investors and improving the bottom line and really having positive impact on the pro forma.
Yeah, I mean, it's across the board. It's time, it's development cost, it's entitlement, like soft cost. That CEQA document, in addition to the time, that might be saving you $300,000 to $500,000, versus having to do an EIR. We've got clients that are coming to me saying, "Hey, we're going to refinance the project, or we're bringing in another investment partner in the project. Can you help us explain to them, why it's a good investment, or why it's been de-risked
Yes.
for these reasons. And it really resonates well with folks across the board.
No, absolutely. Well, guys, you've made me really dangerous right now. So, I'm one of these guys, oh, I got some information, I'm going to go use it. So if I was going to say, okay, I got AB 130, SB 131, and I want to go find a no-brainer site, what, how are you going to direct me to go find a no-brainer site?
I'd go target the cities that recently adopted that you want to do business in, and
Yeah.
maybe it's a city that recently adopted a general plan update to meet their housing requirements under RENA, the
Hmm.
Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and start to look around there for sites. I think again these infill
Yeah.
development sites we see, particularly here, where land is at a premium along the coastal areas in Orange County, San Diego, LA,
Yeah.
in the Inland Empire. You look at sites that have large amounts of surface parking with an existing office building or
Yeah. Yeah.
old retail use that's primed for redevelopment. Those
Hmm.
are great opportunities, and that's those infill sites that are previously developed that you can redevelop, repurpose. Those are great targets for
Yeah.
using this legislation.
I
So
mean,
let's
even
say, oh, sorry, Tim, go
now, I
ahead.
was going to say, Carter, even Class A buildings. I mean,
Yeah.
we're seeing some projects where we're like, wow, that's an amazing office complex or medical complex. Um, but they're like, yeah, but it's half empty or two-thirds
Yeah.
empty, and the cap rates are you know really working against them, especially with high interest rates.
Yeah.
And we do some analysis with them, and even pull in Lake Bridge on it and find out, oh my gosh, the land's worth double if you tear the building down and redevelop the site. It's pretty amazing.
Exactly. And that's really what I was thinking about. And the move, I don't know where the office thing's going to go, but there's a lot of vacant commercial buildings.
Yep.
Yeah, along the airport in Newport and Irvine, there's a lot of industrial. Maybe it still works, maybe it doesn't. So let's say I found my site, okay, and I'm coming to you guys going, I found a site. It's 19 acres. I need you guys to help me move this process forward. Let's just say it's a commercial building of some site. I want to repurpose it to residential. What is the playbook that you're going to lay out for me over the next 90-day period?
I think first we come in, we do our initial due diligence and research, right, to get our arms around the project and see what the opportunities are, what's eligible, what's not. We then work with architects, land planners, and engineers. We come up with a site plan. And then from there, we will formulate our entitlement strategy and lay out how we can best utilize different pieces of legislation, what the entitlement path looks like and timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And we really then like to go in and have an initial meeting with city staff. And this will be senior staff, planning director, community development director, maybe the city manager, but typically we start with planning staff and try and get their buy-in. And provided we get their buy-in, then we're going in moving forward with filing a SB 330 application or pre-application with the city or both. And from there, that starts the timeline that gets you vested. And from there, it's just off to the races with full site development applications, tentative track maps, engineering, design, refining the architecture, putting together floor plans, etc. But that first 90 days is really putting that strategy together.
Right.
And at the end, after that initial stage, we've got plan for securing those entitlements, how we're going to go about it, how long it's going to take,
Yep.
and what it's going to cost.
Great. Great. Tim, anything you want to add to that? I like it.
Yeah, I think one of the keys, I mean, it's a combination of that question you asked and one you asked earlier. Hey, where should they go look? And Brian
Yeah.
mentioned cities. A lot of these cities, as part of their new housing element, have adopted housing overlays. And so basically think of it, the state says you need to produce more units. and they tell a city or county how many. The city's like, oh, there's no way I can do that many. So they have to figure it out. And then they go in and say, okay, we're going to look at these areas and decide, hey, these areas are probably going to need to redevelop from commercial or office or whatever to residential. They put an overlay. That overlay creates the zoning that you need now. So all of a sudden you're eligible for SB 330 and
Oh,
the
wow,
other.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
So just for our listeners, this gets into the next question, talking about RENA, but RENA is the Regional Housing Needs Analysis, where the state has come and said, hey guys, we need, what is it, 3 million houses? Is that what it is in the state of California?
The numbers are all different. They're all over the board, but let's just say it's several million
Okay.
of new housing that we need.
And so everybody and every community has to, I mean, here's your share of the total need. And Tim, what you said is that we've gone in, we're trying to overlay it, but it's easy to say you need to build 30,000 units in your community. It's another thing to do it. So how has the whole RENA process impacted housing, the viewpoint of the electeds? I know we can talk about Huntington Beach in some instances, what their thoughts are vis-a-vis some others, but on the ground, guys, when you're dealing with the jurisdictions and the development community, what has been the impact of RENA in your experience?
Well, I think it's been interesting, Carter. Cities had a really difficult time embracing this, and rightfully so. You look at cities that were pretty much fully built out, and the state says you have to put in 4,000, 5,000, 8,000 new homes. How are the cities really going to do that?
Yeah.
And the cities don't have to build the units; they just have to zone properties so that they could be built. And the way they're doing this is they're getting creative. Tim mentioned overlays. That's one way they can get creative. Tim and I have spent our careers being creative in coming up with housing opportunities, right? We look at sites, we say, gosh, I know that's zoned industrial, but it would make a lot more sense being residential. And now the cities are forced to be creative on their own and find new housing opportunity sites.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's taken a couple of years, but cities by and large have adopted their general plan updates to meet their RENA requirements. And again, this creates the opportunity we just talked about, where you might have a general plan designation. The zoning may not be there yet, but we can work around that. So it's truly created opportunities. And I think the other benefit that it does here is it gives those local politicians, the decision makers, the political cover.
Yeah.
And they're still faced. You're still going to have opposition. This Ellis legislation doesn't take away NIMBYs. It doesn't take away the environmental groups. It doesn't take away the labor opposition. You're still going to have people coming to the meetings with pitchforks.
Yeah.
But what it does is it gives the city council members some political cover to say, this is a tough decision for me, but we really have no choice here, folks, because we have to do this.
Yeah.
And so, you get a bunch of green lights at the end of the night at a city council hearing, and you get your project approved.
Yeah. And I think the other thing it adds is it kind of forces the community to be more reasonable. As funny as that might sound, I mean, we've got a project that was 10 acres, and this poor landowner tried for 10 years to get it approved for 60 units. This is in kind of Santa Barbara area. And the community around it was the same, they were single family and multifamily, all bordering the project. And it was, there's a freeway frontage road there. I mean, it was very reasonable to do the 60 units, and they just, were fighting him nonstop. All of a sudden the city said, oh my gosh, for the RENA, we need more sites. And they rezoned that site for 300 units. And the community came unglued. And they're like, wait, we want the 60 units. And they're like, well, then why didn't you support the 60 units? And they ended up kind of negotiating it to be, I think it was 240 units or something.
Yeah.
But if you don't get on board with a good quality
Yeah.
project, you
Yeah.
could be stuck with something much more dense.
No, absolutely. So now, guys, if you don't mind, I'd like to give some real life examples of some of the projects you're working on. We've got all of these law changes, these new tools, new ways to mix and match, where it makes sense. Could you just discuss about how you've gotten some wins with your clients with all of the new laws and options that we're starting to get in the state?
Sure. I know Brian already talked about this, the one in San Diego, which was pretty huge. I mean, basically, you're going from like 20 units to 200 units
Wow.
on that site. We've got another one in San Diego County that was going to be, heavy. It was two huge things. It was going to be a big EIR. It was going to be difficult, and it was going to need to meet VMT, vehicle miles traveled, which is a new traffic metric that basically says homes need to be close to jobs. And all of a sudden, with that in place, you've got these kind of semi-rural areas even that just don't have a ton of jobs, and it makes it impossible to mitigate for this requirement. So in this case, with some of the housing legislation, talking about AB 130, that is similar to a 15183 exemption. And what we used is a 15183 exemption that says if you're consistent with general plan and zoning, you can be VMT exempt and CEQA exempt. And there's some exceptions to it, but we've got folks on board to say, okay, now we don't need an EIR, we don't even likely need an addendum, we can do a CEQA exemption. So just it basically saved the project.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple projects in Santa Barbara County where, with all the RENA and stuff, there's something kind of interesting. Every 7 years, they got to update their housing element. Mm-hmm. If they don't update it in time and it doesn't get adopted and accepted by the state, then they're out of, they're inconsistent or not compatible with the state, with the RENA requirements. And so if you have a residentially zoned project, you can go and apply for SB 330 and then apply for what's called builder's remedy. And it really puts teeth on some of these requirements. And we were able to do that up there. And we got significant increased zoning in an area that would be almost impossible before.
Yeah.
And that was two different projects with the county of Santa Barbara.
Well, I went to school at UC Santa Barbara. I didn't think they were so amenable to work with, but things are changing.
The county's really great up there.
Yeah, the county versus the city. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of your other partners is Scott Emery, and Scott couldn't participate in the podcast today. But we're working a lot with him and his team related to making deals pencil with CFD financing. And I know that he's doing some incredible things to save millions of dollars, with his grading reviews. Could you just riff on that a little bit, on how Scott and his team is doing that as a member of QTative?
Yeah, Scott's team's great. I mean, there's builders that say, hey, we won't buy a deal unless we've got Scott Emery's team with QTative in there looking at the numbers. So we've had several projects recently where we brought him in. One of them was that same project in San Diego County, but we've got him doing stuff up north too that Brian can mention because he's working on another one. But we basically had the buyer and the seller numbers, which were very different, and the improvement cost for infrastructure was coming in really high according to the cost estimators. So he went out there, he's got a lot of great contacts, and they dug into the grading, the roads, and the utilities and did some value engineering. How can we do this different? Met with the contractors, the local contractors that he knows well, and says, hey, what's it really going to take to build this? And they'll actually bid the project and give true numbers So we did that. We gave it to the folks on both sides doing the cost estimates, and they were like, okay, great.
Yeah.
This, you gave us the numbers, this works. And it saved us millions of dollars. We've done that on multiple projects. But I'll let Brian weigh in with one of his examples.
Yeah. I'm working with Scott and his team on a master plan in Northern California. It's entitled, but yet it's got a lot of requirements for it. It's a typical master plan where you've got to put in huge amounts of infrastructure, streets, roads, water, sewer, fire stations, school sites, etc. And Scott came in. We worked with the civil engineer to value engineer the project, look at the grading, the dewatering costs for this project, which were astronomical, and literally cut tens of millions of dollars out of the budget. And we did that by going out and getting some competitive bids.
Yeah.
And then working with the city, using a development agreement to negotiate fee credits. Because
Yeah.
as the master developer, you're really partnering with the city. I don't know if I really want to call it a true partnership, but hey, you're doing a lot for the city, and they should really look to you and thank you for all that. And one of the
Yeah.
ways to thank you is by giving you fee credits. So if you're having to pay tens of millions of dollars in storm drain fees, in water fees, in street improvement fees, you should get credits for that when you're building that infrastructure for the city. And that's what we're able to do.
Yeah. No, love it. That's a big thing of, we're always looking for making sure we're getting all of our credits. That's key. Okay, we're getting into let's go into the lightning round now. And I appreciate you guys for all your time and bearing with me, because I don't live in the world of you do with all the ABs of the state. But what is the one danger and what that we need to watch out for? And then the follow-up question is one opportunity to chase as it relates to our collective clients.
I'll mention a danger.
Okay.
One thing that we see with clients is them going to the agency. They got a new deal they want to buy. They're in due diligence. They ask the agency questions and they don't get accurate answers. And as Brian and I have said, a lot of this legislation's new, even brand new. And it's, that's not what they do on a day-to-day basis. So, but our clients will go in, get this information and go, okay, well, this deal doesn't work. When in reality, it could have been a great deal.
Yeah.
And so they should get good. The danger is misinformation. I guess the opportunity that goes with that is, hey, bring in some folks that, can help you, work your way through that. And, Brian and I actually meet with builders and developers, and we'll do little lunch and learn sessions and say, hey, for the kind of company you are, here's the kind of legislation you should be focused on, and here's why.
Yep.
So for opportunities, Carter, I think what we're seeing, one of the best opportunities is going to be urban, suburban offices. Okay. So, yes, we're returning to the office. However, it is different. And I think that is here to stay, somewhat of a hybrid work environment. And so when we looked at the data, we are at 60% of utilization compared to pre-pandemic levels. So that means your office space has a 40% inefficiency. And so when you look at that across the board in a metropolitan area, there's a lot of opportunities. And that then goes into what I talked about earlier of those opportunities are often located in prime areas, located in close proximity to employment centers, freeways, transportation corridors and utilities, making it very easy to redevelop those sites. So I think those are some opportunities that we're working on right now, and I think are going to be a big part of how the future of some of our urban and suburban markets are going to redevelop.
Yeah. And if somebody is, there is so many things going on. I feel like we just dumped a bunch of Legos, and then how do all these Legos come together so that we can get our entitlements to, to create the value, the community, the place, the residences that we want. If somebody, and Tim, to what you said, this, I guarantee you the cities don't know what they're talking about, and they're going to tell people the wrong information. And that could mean the difference between, somebody really capturing a great opportunity. So if somebody was questioning the advice they're getting, what can they give you a call? Are you willing to take their calls to talk with them? You mentioned the lunch and learns. If you would you be willing to go in and do a deeper dive with them as long as they're buying the pizza and the Coke? Are those things that you would be willing to take calls and meetings from our listeners?
Of course. I mean, it's an opportunity for us too, right? We
Yeah.
we love doing that. And Brian we did a lunch and learn seminar on AB 130 recently. I did a panel discussion on some of the same stuff recently. It's fun. We like doing that. We love meeting people and kind of seeing what their challenges are and helping them with it. So we're always happy to do that.
Great. Great. Well, guys, I want to say thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I hope I didn't massacre, all of the state legislation too bad, but I'm not the expert. Tim and Brian are. Call Tim and Brian. By the way, their contact information will be in the show notes. Additionally, we'll load up all of the legislation we talked about in a PDF form. So should you care to get into the individual bills, you're able to do that. And with that, I just want to say thank you very much, guys, for taking the time to speak with us and our listeners today. And if you enjoyed this podcast, I encourage you to subscribe to LandtoLots wherever you get your podcast. Thank you and have a great day.
You have been listening to the LandtoLots podcast with Carter Froelich. Follow us wherever you find your podcast to never miss a new episode.